Hi gang, the joy of football ends the Premier League season with Martin and my selections of our teams, the team of the season, the best 11 of the season, the most improved 11 of the season, the newcomers 11 of the season, and I give my annual team to make you scream, the 11 best performances against Chelsea. Martin has Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry, which is about his trip to Old Trafford for the final game of the season. Can I just say, if you enjoy this, go on the Patreon to get more involved. If you enjoy it, go to substack.com where the Joy of Football's writing is available. And if you enjoy it, subscribe, make a comment, get tuned in. Martin, you chose your 11s on the drive back from Old Trafford, which was probably from about 7 o'clock to 11:15 at night.
Well, that's true. What I did do is go through the teams in my head. I promise you I didn't write anything down.
The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks for a shot in! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football. Hello, the Joy of Football podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett, wraps up the Premier League season with our selected 11s. Let's launch straight in with the Joy of Football Premier League best 11 of the season. Martin, goalkeeper.
Well, I've got an amalgam of two goalkeepers because they've just shared the Golden Glove. David Raya of Arsenal and Matz Sels of Nottingham Forest. They've been clean sheet alongside clean sheet for so long. Neither of them managed to get a clean sheet on the last day of the season, but they've both been excellent. I think in different ways. I mean, Raya probably has less to do. Obviously, Forest have had a very good season, but Raya is in a side that's really rock solid defensively. But when he has to make saves, the quality of the saves that he has made, if you had to draw a distinction between the two of them, probably in more critical moments because Arsenal are going for more, obviously the league title, obviously getting to the semi-finals of the Champions League, semi-finals of the League Cup as well. So he's really pulled off saves at crucial moments. But I think Sels has been, in a different way, he's been almost responsible for the way Nottingham Forest have been so good defensively. Of course, they like the low block and it's Nuno's way, but it needs some authority in there, even though their individual players in front of him have all had good seasons as well. But I think he's the one. You think what it's like if they miss games, then it's a tough act to follow for the backups.
Well, I've gone for Raya over Sels. Sels would have been my number two.
Yeah.
And the reason I've gone twofold. One, which is no fault of Sels, but Raya had a wonderful European campaign as well, and that has to be taken into account for me in the season. Yeah. And the other reason is I just think in one or two big matches, Sels made errors, and Raya didn't tend to make them in big games. So I've gone Raya over Sels. So
I think they're more than just goalkeepers. I think they're massive contributors to the general collective. I mean, when Raya strides forward at an Arsenal corner, not to attack the ball, but to pass on his instructions to the various members of the unit that's trying to score from the set piece. So I think they're proper men doing a proper job.
Your defence?
Yes, Daniel Munoz at right back, Virgil van Dijk, Gabriel, continuing the Arsenal theme, and Anthony Robinson. Left back was difficult. There are some very good left back performances this season, and there's some that I've probably had to leave out. We're doing other 11s as well as we go through the podcast. But Anthony Robinson was always a bit of I think the balance about his defending was not in his favour really, but he's improved that, and he's such a powerful unit going forward. So Do you want to compare?
Well, I've got Munoz.
Stuff?
I've got Munoz like you. I put Saliba. I've been more strict in my positioning, and Van Dijk plays on the left of Liverpool's central defence. So I didn't choose Gabriel. Otherwise, if Van Dijk was a shoo-in, I'd have chosen Gabriel. I also had Milenkovic in my mind, but I chose Saliba to partner Van Dijk because he plays on the right of Arsenal. And at left back, I went Gvardiol. Who has switched between left back and centre back, but played more at left back, and he's someone that I've always had reservations about. Partly because I have reservations about everyone who comes out of RB Leipzig, although that's probably a Chelsea thing. But also because I didn't think he settled particularly well at City in his first season. But he in a terrible season for City, I thought he was heading. By their standards, I thought he was head and shoulders above everybody. I thought he was outstanding, and he scored a lot of goals from left back. Let's just have a quick word. Saliba, Van Dijk, and Gabriel, we all know. Let's have a quick word on Munoz.
Well, he's showcased as a right wing back, really, the way that Oliver Glasner set up the team. But he has played in a back four as well, and he's just. He's a pest to the opposition because he's always running forward. He's decent defensively. He's not one of those who you worry about if the ball goes over into that area behind him when he's playing as a wing back. He gets back. He's aggressive. He scored half a dozen goals as well. And I think, again, you look at the recruitment that they plucked him out. He's Colombian international, but he's not he's not a kid. So he's been around for a while. And Palace found him, and he found Palace because it's been to such mutual benefit for the two of them. And we know Palace have won the cup in which he played a massive part, but they've also finished with 53 points, which is by far the most they've ever got in a Premier League season. So excellent.
Your midfield.
Yes, I think Ryan Gravenberch I put in the middle of the midfield because I think his work for Liverpool, he could be argued as the difference because he didn't play much under Jurgen Klopp and he's played all the time under Arne Slot. So I think we've all been looking to try and see what the differences are from Jurgen's time and what the new coach has done. And I think that's one very obvious thing, and he's been very consistent through it. And either side I've got Declan Rice, who is capable of doing all the jobs in midfield, really, and has started to score a few more goals, some very important ones, some very spectacular ones as well, something that he always talks about, that he wants to add to his game. He's also, I didn't mention Gabriel's set piece ability to score, but Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka are the deliverers par excellence, aren't they, really? And then I've gone for Bruno Fernandes, who is so head and shoulders above any Manchester United player in the course of a very, very difficult season.
To be fair, head, shoulders, chest, waist, groin, knees, and most of his boots above every Manchester United player. Our Manchester United producers are looking at me with that not again face. Yes, again.
He is, well, you can say what you like about the rest of the Manchester United players, but for me, Bruno is a joy to watch. Of course, he has his moments. He's been sent off a couple of times this season, hasn't he? And maybe I think 3 times, and one got rescinded. And so he can be petulant. But he's had a few things to be petulant about, I think, probably in his own dressing room. But to constantly produce the performances now,
proper captain who said Christian Eriksen takes the penalty on the last day of the season on his final appearance.
I was wondering when that was going on. I come to the letter. My last letter of the campaign involved me being at that game, but whether. He's on 98 goals for Man United, and that is...
that's my phone. Totally unprofessional. I always put my phone on
somebody who's turned their phone off, I'm very pleased to record that in podcast 28, I was chastised by my co-host for my phone going off. Revenge is sweet.
It's a message about the attractions I can find in Russlov, where the UEFA Conference Final is being played, and I'm heading for tomorrow. So
yes, I hope culinary maybe.
I've already decided on that.
All right. But anyway, Bruno, big time. The point I was going to make: 98 goals.
Yeah.
He had lots of shots in the game. I'm sure he knows he's on 98 goals, but he's not in the team just to score goals, but he's way ahead of everybody else. And that would have been 99, probably.
Yeah, I've got Bruno in my team, but
he might be leaving. That's the point I was going to make.
I've got Bruno in my team, but not Bruno Fernandes. I've got Bruno Guimaraes, who I was always iffy about when he was the holding midfielder at Newcastle. But as soon as Tonali was put back there and he was pushed on a bit, I think he's been terrific, Bruno Guimaraes. I also think that in the way that Bruno Fernandes can be quite dislikable if you're not a Manchester United supporter, I think Bruno Guimaraes can be quite dislikable. He's got a bit of Roy Keane about him, hasn't he? He does go into the challenge with a bit of
from a commentary point of view, you're never quite sure what colour his hair is going to be, and
you have to check that in the
you have to check that when he walks around. They walk around the pitch coming into St James's Park, so you can check that before he gets anywhere near getting changed. And the other thing about him, which I love, and it's a story you can really only tell once, is the 39 number is the number of his dad's taxi.
Oh, really?
Back in Brazil. I think it's just a beautiful human story about it, and he chose that. My
holding midfielder, I've gone Chelsea, Moises Caicedo, who I think is... I remember having an argument with someone when Chelsea signed him and said he can be the new N'Golo Kante. And this person said, no, he's Makelele. I said, no, he drives forward. He wins the ball and drives forward. He doesn't win the ball and pass it. And this season he's been the new N'Golo Kante.
Does he drive a bigger car than N'Golo Kante?
Yeah. N'Golo, who bought a Mini on arrival in England.
But mostly ran from his home to the training ground at Leicester.
Once turned up late at a France training camp when his his plane was cancelled, and Didier Deschamps, the French manager, looked at him and said, why don't you just run? You do that anyway. Much to the joy of the rest of the squad. But I honestly think that Caicedo's been the best deep anchor midfielder in the Premier League this season, with the ability to win the ball, which he's done more than anyone else, according to Opta, in the midfield third, and his ability to drive forward, and his really top quality ability to pass. He's an excellent passer of the ball, and his through passes are top draw. In fact, they're better than Kante's. He hasn't got that real pace of Kante, who read the game so brilliantly. But he has got other attributes, and passing is top.
I just have to make a point here that in my selection, I left out most of the Chelsea candidates because I knew they would appear elsewhere in the programme.
I haven't got many, so but Gravenberch came into my consideration. And Declan Rice came into my consideration as well. But in the end, I went for Alexis McAllister, who I think has been the best midfielder in the Premier League this season, who just never gives the ball away. And it doesn't matter how concertinaed in he is in any situation. He always seems to come out of it with the correct pass. And he never seems ruffled either. I don't know if he's the nicest geezer in the world, but he comes across as that sometimes.
He's always having to answer questions about his background because from his name. Of course, Gary McAllister was a big midfield player.
Gary McAllister was one word.
Yes.
Or McAllister was one word.
Yeah.
Alexis McAllister is two words. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. And it doesn't always get printed like that, I must say.
But I think he is... I think he is for £30 million the buy of whichever summer it was.
If you touched on something there, that it cost £30 million because he signed a contract, he could have been available
for nothing.
Yeah, that's become topical, hasn't it?
We've tried,
he's set a trend that
Set a trend or a trend?
Well, I'll leave that up to the listeners, but I think they know what we're talking about.
No,
And by the way, what a proper send-off Trent got in the end.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Quite rightly too, Liverpool fans. Your front line.
Well, Mo Salah's ring-fenced in every respect, isn't he? And then you're not going to like me for doing this because I've got Brian Mbeumo to play somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you don't like doing that, but I've coached teams and I know that you can fiddle them in and go for your best players.
Yeah.
And he is a fantastic player as well.
Yeah.
And Alexander Isak up front because...
Well, Salah speaks for himself. We've spoken about him loads of times. I've gone for Salah and Isak as well. Isak's qualities for you? Do you think that the Newcastle are a big club, but do you think that bigger clubs will come in for him?
I think they probably have already, but Eddie has been speaking out over the last few days about how it irritates him that suddenly it always gets to him, the gossip that's going on. I mean, it reaches him, and in another sense, it gets to him. It annoys him as well. But why can't he fulfill, certainly in the short term, the next season, the ambition? They're in the Champions League now, so I think if it's a stepping stone, so be it. But Newcastle have the chance to become, with now having the investment, having been there for some time, and they're improving their revenue streams and balancing the books a bit better. It's not their fault that they badly balanced it. It's just the way that the football is run now. They got they won the lottery, but then found that the rules had changed, that they could only accept some of it. And I think he will stay there for another season at least, and then maybe the contract. How football works, but he could play in what you might call a super club. If I'm not upsetting Newcastle fans by suggesting at the moment they're not quite a super club.
He's been there a while. I thought in the first couple of years he was there, he disappeared from games. I didn't always... I thought he came to the ball too much and didn't run in behind quite as much as people thought he did. And I think this season all that's been ironed out. And I think he's a 90-minute player now.
And they've won a trophy. That means a lot. I know what you're saying. But he glides through games, doesn't he? And his movement's so easy, and he's not really like anybody else. As a commentator, you sometimes try and we've talked about Tyler Dibbling being like Chris Waddle, for example. You use that as a tool to try and when you see them once a month, then you remember that's a starting point. But I can't say that Isak reminds me of anybody except himself.
I've gone on the left, not Mbeumo, who I love and think I'm not sure that Liverpool shouldn't buy. I've gone Diaz, who I think got a bit of a raw deal this season. Gakpo did really well when he was in that position, but I just felt that Diaz was getting back to his form in the first 6 months when they bought him 2-3 years ago in January 2022 to replace Mane, and I think he looked the player this season that Manchester City never found on the left wing.
I love him. Because he's just everything that you want to watching football or coaching football or seeing, or trying to emulate playing. He's got a huge heart. He never gives up. He's a team player. And industry with a capital I. He's just... I would imagine, obviously, Jurgen Klopp's had him, and now Arne Slot's had him. It must be an absolute dream to work with. I don't know what he's like in terms of, when he doesn't play. He doesn't always play, as you're saying. Gakpo did a very good job.
He had a terrific season. Yeah. Just a word on Mbeumo.
Smooth as silk, undemonstrative, goes about his business in front of goal calmly. He's a lesson to finishers about just as...
two-footed, isn't he?
Bit. Yeah, and he's I'd find a way to get him into that team, whatever.
And he's much younger than he looks, 25. Yes. And the big clubs must be looking at him.
I met him because he was there before they got promoted to the Premier League as well. Yeah. I met him on the day before they played their first Premier League game. First time I met him.
Right, now I've got to tell you, Martin's cheated and he's got a load of subs. So we'll come on to that in a second. No. But before we do, I just want to dwell on our two teams. So Martin's team is Raya in the first half and Sels in the second half. A back four of Munoz, Van Dijk, Gabriel and Robinson. A midfield of Rice, Gravenberch and Bruno Fernandes. And a front three of Salah, Isak and Mbuemo. And my team is Raya in goal, a back four of Munoz, Saliba, Van Dijk and Gvardiol, a midfield of Guimaraes, Caicedo and McAllister, and a front three of Salah, Isak and Diaz. Martin, your substitutes.
Well, yeah, the other goalkeeper, obviously, of the two, James Tarkowski, because I think he's epitomised that not just this season, but the fact that Everton has stayed in the Premier League ever since he joined the club. He did miss games eventually, but he hadn't missed a game until his recent injury. He's absolutely a rock solid defender, and personally, I don't think he should have got sent off. When he didn't get sent off, I thought that was a tackle of the ages, really. But I know I'm in the minority in that. Top guy, bumped into him at the Goodison last game and had a chat with him, and he's certainly somebody that if I had a defensive problem, I'd send him on. If I'm 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, I'd send him on.
Can I just say, tackle from the ages, described by a commentator from the ages.
I think that's a compliment. Neil. That's very rare. I might. Can we cut that as a sound clip and I take it away with me? Alexis McAllister would be one of my subs as well. Matheus Cunha, we think is going to Manchester United from Wolves. Jared Bowen, who I love to bits, is another wholehearted 90-minute player and continue to produce spectacular goals. And because he celebrates them in his pretty understated way, I don't think he gets full credit. And West Ham have not had a great season, so Tonali at Newcastle, I think, has bounced back from his difficulties. I've got to have Erling Haaland because we're looking at Erling Haaland and saying, well, it's not quite as good as the first season or the second season. It's still very good. Yeah. So I would be foolish not to be able to call upon him, and I think it's only relative that we're not starring.
I want honesty here.
Yes.
Do you dream?
You always get honesty.
Do you dream, as a former non-league centre forward, that you are Erling Haaland?
No, I dream that I'm me 20 years old, and there's a lot of advantages to that. But football is the main one. Then Brian Mbomo's mate, Wissa.
What a season he's had! I love him.
He's fantastic, and Eberechi Eze, who I've seen in recent games a lot of, and he's dominated a lot of those games, but possibly couldn't. You could maybe put him in instead of Bruno Fernandes, but I think Eze's had a bit more help from his teammates, and Crystal Palace is terrific. So yeah, I wanted to have the subs because it's really hard. I don't. To be pinned down to I deal with squads.
He's put a player from every team in there.
I've tried to. We haven't finished yet, but I think if I've missed anybody out, it's my mistake, not deliberate.
We move on to the Premier League most improved 11, and we've got the same goalkeeper, I think.
Yeah, Dean Henderson, who has been around quite a while, but has
easily his best season.
I would say so, and I do think I mentioned this before. We had him as our player of the three of the best, and that he is very comfortable at Crystal Palace, and he's been shunted around a bit in his career. I'm probably wondering whether he was ever going to replace David De Gea and be the goalkeeper that maybe even still Manchester United are looking for. But I think that ship has sailed.
You're going to address the Manchester United Aston Villa game in your letter,
yes.
Where of course Martinez got sent off. Dean Henderson didn't get sent off in the FA Cup final. Do you think the two incidents were the same or different?
I think they were different. I think every incident is different because it's in a different time of a match. It's in a different stage of the game in terms of what the contest is. I don't think you can ever say that's the same as that because it isn't exactly the same unless it happens in the 5th minute with the same players involved in the same stadium. So, but I do refer to Emmy in the letter, but I don't refer to what happened in the cup final, although I did in my commentary at the game. And we can talk about it maybe after the letter. So it's a wonderful season. He's been responsible for not just the FA Cup win and with a huge part in that, but also in getting the 53 points, which is tremendous.
Your defence?
Yes. Jed Spence, I've put in at right back, although he's played at left back a bit this season of Spurs. Jan-Paul van Hecke of Brighton. Dan Burn, who's had a lofty season in more ways than one. And you'll probably be pleased with this. Marc Cucarella.
Yes.
So there's a lot of good left backs.
Well, Cucarella was very near my left back of Premier League, but I went with Gvardiol. But he has had a terrific season and he has improved. I mean, the goals a lot. But my back line is Ola Aina, Nottingham Forest, who I think has had an outstanding season.
Ex-Chelsea.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Well, of course it's. I just in case somebody.
Ezra Konsa, who I think would have been very close to my Premier League team of the season. I think Konsa now is a shoo-in for that right-sided centre-back of England, as John Stones struggles to ever get fit. I think Konsa is worthy of it, and I think he's unfortunate not to be a Champions League player next season because I think he's worthy of that. Levi Colwill at Chelsea is my other centre-back. He's 22 years old, and I look back to John Terry at 22, and he was not yet world class. He was learning it. He was becoming it. And I've had my doubts about Levi Colwill. And he played mostly left back last season. And I'm Levi, you're getting there. And I think he's going to be an England defender for a long time to come. And my left back is your Premier League left back, Anthony Robinson, who I agree has had an outstanding season. He's always been a physical specimen. Now he's more of a football specimen as well. So your midfield?
Yes. I'd be very surprised if you agree with any of these, but Youri Tielemans, Aston Villa's player of the season, a well-established player, but maybe people think of him in his Leicester days, and this season suddenly he's become the player that obviously Villa thought that they'd acquired initially. Damsgaard of Brentford, who has been in England for a while but been injured most of the time, and has really, really played a creative part in the way they performed this season. And then Jack Hinchelwood, who I've mentioned a few times because I commentated on his grandfather and his great uncle. The family of the Hinchelwoods is a well-known football family, particularly on the South Coast, and he finished off by scoring 3 goals, I think, in the last 2 games as well.
He's had an outstanding season.
Yeah.
I actually agree with I haven't got any problems with your selection at all there, because Damsgaard's been absolutely terrific as well. I haven't gone for those two, but I have no qualms about them. I have gone for Youri Tielemans, and I've been quite dismissive of Tielemans in the past, not in a horrible way. I think he's a really talented player. I loathe him, of course, because he scored the FA Cup final winner for Leicester against Chelsea from 25 yards. I mean, just
he also scored 2 fantastic goals for Belgium against England, didn't he? As well,
but what I've always doubted about Tielemans is his legs. I just think he's a little bit slow, like Enzo Fernandez, like other midfielders I can think of. But this season, he has been, I mean, again, he would have not been out of place in the Premier League 11 this season. He's been absolutely magnificent in Champions League and in Premier League. So he's in my lineup, and I think he's a top player now. And I've gone Gravenberch, who didn't get into my 11, but gets into my improved 11. I've gone 4-2-3-1, so I'll give you my 3 before we get on to your attackers. Yeah. And I got Mbeumo in there.
Yeah. You've got him on the right.
On the right. I wanted to put Wisser in there. Well, he was really played up front in a 3-5-2 or in a 4-4-2 a lot of the season. I wanted to put Wisser in there, but my number 10 is Justin Kluivert, who has had a fantastic season for Bournemouth. And I just feel he's come from such a deep base, Kluivert, because he was struggling to establish himself. He was playing on the wing, and he's just turned up as an outstanding number 10 for Bournemouth. And I've stuck with Bournemouth for my left-sided player, Semenyo, who got 2 goals on the final day of the season to, I think, take his league tally to 11 and his total tally to 13. And he's looking to me like one they'll struggle to keep, Semenyo. I think he's looking seriously big club player.
I'm seriously worried now because he's in my team as well, and we're overlapping far more than I ever thought we would.
Go on your front three.
He's on that. I'm Jacob Murphy on the right,
who I desperately wanted to put in that bar, but Mbeumo.
Chris Wood up the middle.
I've got him as my centre forward.
Yeah, and Antoine Semenyo.
Yeah. We've talked about Wood and Murphy a lot.
The thing about Jacob is I've known him quite a while, and he's a lovely kid. And the thing I've always said about him is that he doesn't realise how good he is, but he does now.
Yeah, I saw him play with his twin brother on opposite flanks for Norwich in the FA Youth Cup in consecutive years, semi-final and final. Against Chelsea, they won it as finalists.
I think we mentioned this before, Neil, but talking about wingers being he's a right-footed right winger, which is a rare thing. And I asked him whether he'd been ever asked to do the inverted stuff and play from the left. He said, no, Josh was always there. His twin brother, so he never grew up having to do that. But Chris Wood, 20 Premier League goals.
Fantastic.
Talked about getting better with age.
But Whistler 19, so edges it. But it's just such a lovely story, isn't it? 32 years old, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Most improved 11 then from Martin and me. Martin's in goal, Henderson, a back four of Spence, Van Heck, Byrne and Cucarella. In midfield, Tielemans, Damsgaard and Hinshelwood. And in attack, Murphy, Wood and Semenyo. And mine was in goal, Henderson, a back four of Aina, Concert, Colwell and Robinson. A midfield two of Gravenberch and Tielemans. An attacking midfield of Mbeumo, Kluivert and Semenyo, and up front, Wood. Okay, next up will be the Newcomers 11, but we're going to just jump out of the 11s now, and we're going to instead move on to Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
Thanks, Neil. To be totally honest, my final Premier League commentary of the season, Manchester United versus Aston Villa, wasn't actually from the Gantry. Host broadcaster TNT and BBC's Match of the Day took up all that available space, as they were quite entitled to do so. My sidekick for the day, Matt Holland, the former Republic of Ireland midfielder and now a board member at his old club Ipswich Town, and I were perched at the back of the press box. We still had an excellent view. It was my first visit to Old Trafford since Sky Sports parted company with me 2 years ago, and it has coincided with a turbulent time for the club. There were protests outside and banners inside, and the Europa League final defeat against Spurs hung like a dark cloud over the build-up to kick-off. However, the main focus of the coverage was not about United, though they could elevate themselves from 16th place to round off their worst season in many categories since that relegation campaign to the second tier in 1974. Villa, though, were the story. Could they do what the Red Devils had failed to achieve the previous Wednesday, find a path into the Champions League? It wasn't in their own hands. Even with a win, they would need help from one result from elsewhere. Newcastle at home to Everton, or Chelsea at Forest, and Manchester City at Fulham. The pre-match stats were a commentator's dream. United, with no Premier League victories in their previous 8 games, just 2 draws, bottom of a table you could draw up over that period. Whereas with 7 wins in their last 8, Villa would be top. United had won only 10 Premier League matches all season. Villa victorious in 9 of their previous 11. On the other hand, though, the visitors posted just 2 successes at Old Trafford in their previous 39 missions to Manchester United. In a 26-match sequence, when their final day fixture had been an away game, only 1 victory. History, shall we say, was far from on the side of Unai Emery's team. For both clubs, their previous match had been against Tottenham Hotspur, United in the Europa League final in Bilbao, and Villa on the Friday of the Premier League's long weekend of the penultimate round of fixtures. That had left a 9-day gap between that 2-0 win and their crucial game at Old Trafford. And I wondered during the match whether that was turning out to be a handicap rather than a restful bonus. The veteran broadcaster Seamus Malin, a good friend and devoted Villa fan, suggested beautifully that it took some of the starch out of their shirts. The shirts, incidentally, and the entire kit, a preview of the new away strip next season. The sharp look didn't herald a sharp performance. Villa were edging to maybe the sharp edge of Emery's tongue at the break. Emi Martinez had made several significant saves when, just before the interval, he was out of the game. Exposed by a bad back pass, he took out United's Rasmus Højlund, denying a goal-scoring opportunity. For a red card, the word obvious has to be included in the judgment. That was the only point that Villa could challenge, but their complaints were in vain. They were lucky to reach the break at 0-0, but now it involved a different team talk about how to marry the need for victory to being a man down. Matt and I were commentating from a position to the right of the camera, so we had an excellent view of the red card and the day's second moment of controversy. Still at 0-0, and with 10 men, it looked as though Villa had gone a goal up. Morgan Rogers steering the ball away from Altay Bayındır, United's second-string goalkeeper, who didn't look as though he had complete control of it, and putting it in the empty net. However, referee Thomas Bramall had already blown for what he saw was a foul by Rogers when he challenged Bayındır. That immediately not only ruled out the goal, but also any chance of a review. As commentators, we hear the VAR end of the conversation, and all that Stuart Atwell at Stockley Park could say was, "Confirm, whistle went before the ball went into the net." Now, there is no guarantee that had the referee delayed his intervention that he would have overturned his original decision, but I'm sure that he would have been sent to the screen for a second look. So Villa left furious again, and as it turned out, a 0-0 would have been enough to finish in 5th place and qualify for the Champions League because Newcastle were being beaten at home by Everton. But now, burning with a sense of injustice, Villa lost their focus. Amad Diallo converted a vintage Bruno Fernandes pass with a skillful header past Martinez's replacement, Robin Olsen. Amad is surely one of a small number of untouchables in United's current predicament, and there was still time for him to be brought down by Ian Madsen for a penalty, an unusual one when the ball was outside the area when the entanglement between the two players happened inside. Both among the players and in the stands was a loud call for Christian Eriksen, with almost his last kick of the ball as a Manchester United player, to step up. Room for a sentimental touch at the end of a harrowing season, and the conversion heralded one of the loudest cheers at the ground in the entire campaign. The big decisions went their way, but United played well. Villa were on the wrong end possibly of one verdict, but their display was more like that ineffective FA Cup semi-final than their buccaneering style in most of their matches. When their last day fury subsides, they will appreciate that, unlike United, they will be in Europe again next season. United, and even more so Spurs, have shown what is possible in the Europa League. Ruben Amorim has a poet's way with words, and in a second language too, and in a post-match address read perfectly the mood in the stadium. He was honest and optimistic, and very likeable. If his coaching is as good as his post-season performance on the Old Trafford public address system, United do have the right man for the job. Maybe the events in Bilbao were United's darkest hour and a half in fact. So possibly, just possibly, a hint of a new dawn at the Theatre of Dreams.
Rubbish. No chance. Absolutely no chance. It'll be the same again next season. United fans suffer. Martinez, Henderson. Sending off?
Well, as I said there, it's the obvious. That has to be an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. And the two verdicts, one was not obvious, therefore no punishment, and the other one was deemed obvious, which I was commentating on both. I probably expected Henderson to be sent off. And couldn't see any way for Martinez to be reprieved unless in Højlund going in the wide area, and of course he's a striker with no sort of confidence in front of goal. You could say that maybe he wouldn't have scored, but that's a judgment call for Martinez, not for the officials. So no, I do believe, but again, I mean, to be fair to Thomas Bramall, he had a right front-on view of the Rogers Altay Bayındır incident.
I thought both officials got it right. Yeah. I think it wasn't a clear scoring opportunity for Haaland, even though it was Haaland, in the situation that it was. And I thought that Martinez should have got out of the way. Martinez was much more with thought, I think.
Yeah, but it's a split-second thought, isn't it? He's suddenly realised, and he's coming out expecting
Bad
to get
pass
the back
back
pass.
by Matty Cash.
Matty Cash, yeah.
And Rodgers, 2 mistakes or 1 mistake? I think everyone's agreed on the mistake that he blew too early. Was it a foul?
Well, I have to be very careful to make my judgments of what it was. For most of my commentary years, it was not a foul. These days, it is seen. Things are seen differently. But I've, in the course of the commentary and since, seen it over and over again. I don't believe that counts as the goalkeeper being in control of the ball.
I agree.
So I think Villa are hard done by it. But the irony is, of course, if they'd not been so furious and they played perhaps with the same authority they'd play with, but you couldn't. We heard Everton had scored in the second half. We none of us would expect that to be the final score. So you can't play for that to be the final score. But just the way history turns out.
I would just say this about Villa. I've had issues with their central defence, even with Konsa becoming such a top player for a number of years. And teams below them, Forest, Bournemouth, Everton, Crystal Palace, all conceded fewer goals this season. And teams below them, Brentford and Tottenham, scored more goals. And other teams in the... other teams scored fewer goals in the top half of the table, although some scored the same. I just think Villa had a fantastic season, given that they were back in the Champions League and they had to play their first choice 11 in every game, essentially, and still got to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. So I've got nothing but respect for their season, but maybe they didn't deserve
their recruitment in January was excellent, and of course Marcus Rashford was injured for the semi-final of the FA Cup. Was expected to be in the squad, and then on the day wasn't there. And Marco Asensio scored 8 goals and missed a couple of penalties. He had to be taken off he was the choice to be taken off when Emi Martinez was sent off. So they lost that as well. So I think they've had an excellent season, and they're a historic club. We both love going to the ground. It's and
they're in the Europa League. They could, fine. Right, okay, we carry on. Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry. If you like this podcast, whether this episode or any episode, please subscribe. Please declare your feelings on the descriptions below, and don't forget you can get closer to us on the Patreon, and you can read Martin's letters a long way behind, but you can read them. They come out on substack.com under the Joy of Football, and my musings as well, which are far
what we should say,
more
Neil,
strident
also, of course they are. Yeah, what we should say is that we're carrying on. We're not
through
closing
the summer.
down.
Oh yeah. We don't holiday.
This is a holiday, by the way.
Next up, the Premier League Newcomers 11. Now, the rules for our Newcomers 11 are either newcomer to the Premier League, as in youth player developing, or newcomer to the club. So you've moved club, even if you move club within the Premier League. Martin, your goalkeeper.
Well, he had to move clubs, really. Aaron Ramsdale, who's, of course, I suppose, gone to a club that's bitten off more than it can chew, really. But when I mentioned Marco Asensio having 2 penalties saved, he saved them both. And he's been constantly excellent in every game's been a barrage of work for him to do. And he's a very cheerful, optimistic soul, and he's got yet another relegation on his CV, but he fronts up to do that. He could have been Arsenal's backup goalkeeper for the season, and maybe might have ended up with some medals. But to move, I saw his first game at Brentford actually, in the aftermath of his move, and Russell Martin obviously played a different way to the way he was having to play a different way. Then they've changed managers, not once but twice after that. But I think he's had a good season. I'd like to see him find another home now. He deserves to play in the Premier League. He's certainly good enough for that.
Mine is Alex Palmer, who joined Ipswich in January, but we won't discuss him now. We'll discuss him in a minute. So your defence?
Aaron Wan Bissaka is new to West Ham.
Who I've got.
Yeah, Dean Huijsen.
Who I've got.
And Milenkovic.
Who I've got.
And Lewis-Skelly.
Who I've got. We got the same back four.
Wow, that's like winning on a slot machine, isn't it?
Wan Bissaka.
An Arne slot machine.
Wan Bissaka's had a lot of grief over the years for being good defender but not good enough offensively. I think he's had a terrific season for West Ham.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Both.
It was a slow start, actually. And then he got in. I saw one of the games where he really got going in November at Newcastle, when he scored actually, and but was playing very progressively. Who was your goalkeeper, by the way? Did you?
I said Alex Palmer.
Alex Palmer.
I'm going to come on to him a bit later.
Yeah, he's an interesting one.
Yeah, we both got Milenkovic in this team. Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher on Sky Sports both put him in their actual
it was close
Premier League 11. He's Serbian, isn't he?
Yes.
I mean,
he's the finished article.
Yeah, Serbians are used to cutting forwards down. I watched Branislav Ivanovic for years, and who was the guy who was at Liverpool, the centre back?
He was Croatian.
No, not. Skrtel, Martin Skrtel.
Yeah.
He
was Slovakian.
Oh, was he Slovakian? Oh, I apologise to everyone in Serbia.
Or Slovakia.
On October the 31st, one year on US radio on the phone in, I asked people to call in as to who should be the biggest monster from football in the parade. New York has a fantastic parade on October the 31st every year, celebrating October 31st, Halloween, celebrating Halloween, and Martin. Someone phoned in and said Martin Skrtel, and we stopped the phoning because that decided it all. But Milenkovic has had an outstanding season.
Yeah, and he was close.
Do you think Huijsen is a Real Madrid quality player?
Well, he's a young Spain international, although he was born in Holland, in the Netherlands, as we should say, and then made his debut for Spain against the Netherlands, which must have been quite a schizophrenic experience for him. Yes, I think he's I heard when all this was mooted that he wanted to stay in the Premier League, but I guess the lure of Madrid and being in the country,
and they've had so many injury problems.
But it's a big step up, and at Bournemouth he's been able to grow with the team. You can't do that. You have to leap up to where they are, Real Madrid. He looks like he's got a great temperament. He's a danger in the box as well. He's got a couple of goals in the Premier League. So it's a shame if indeed he does leave Bournemouth, which he will, I think, but if he leaves the country as well. But he's certainly contributed in his season here.
When Lewis Hall came into the Chelsea team, he was a midfielder who got played at left back, and Newcastle bought him as a left back, and England used him as a left back. When Lewis-Skelly came into the Arsenal team, he was a midfielder who Arsenal, as an emergency, put at left back. He's now capped by England at left back. Is he a left back now?
Well, he is, in that he's played Premier League football and international football in that position. Versatility is a great quality. Whether he ends up going back in midfield probably depends on the kind of circumstance that you got in the team as a left back. If there's a vacancy there and suddenly, well, you go and play there, we're covered at left back now. You go and have a game in there and you become an established midfield player. It's two players in one, really, and Arsenal's recruitment again, they do bring a lot of young players through. They don't always get the credit for it, like some other clubs. So it's been a great campaign for him.
Midfield?
Yes, Archie Gray. at Tottenham. That's his first season at Tottenham. The Wolves midfield player, Andre, the Brazilian, who was also in his first season, has been a cornerstone, a linchpin of the way they rebuilt their campaign and done very well. And Elliot Anderson, who was a candidate to get in some of the other teams, who was Newcastle had to sell for financial regulation reasons, and has fitted in at Nottingham Forest really smoothly and been probably he looked back a bit nostalgia to the northeast, and I'm sure Eddie Howe looks down and think it wasn't the way we could have kept him, because he would have,
especially because they're still thin on midfielders in numbers. Yeah.
And I think that's just an issue that the season has thrown up again, that you can't have to discriminate between who you sell and who you don't. There should be just natural meritocracy movement. If somebody wants to spend big money on one of your big players, then you can consider that. And
or somebody who's not playing regularly and wants to play regularly, take half a step
but
down.
That's natural, isn't
it? Anderson's in my midfield. I've gone 4-2-3-1 again, so I'll give you my 2 and my 3. Anderson's in my midfield with Merino at Arsenal, who obviously made more of a name for himself playing up front than in midfield, but he's a player, Merino. Not necessarily a world-class player, but he is a player, and he was of immense use to us.
Another ex-Newcastle player with slightly different circumstances,
and then my 3, I've got 2 Brighton players who they signed, one from Newcastle, Minte, and one from...
It was in the same envelope as Anderson. Those were the 2 that had to go to balance the books and stop a points deduction.
And from Leeds, Jorginho Ruta, who came into the Premier League a year before his team. I think he's a really good player, Ruta. Brighton, their recruitment continues to be absolutely brilliant. And I put Marmoush in Newcastle, who in fact you've got in your front 3. And he looks. I mean, he was a top player.
You said Marmoush Newcastle. You mean Marmoush Manchester City?
Did I say
You did say that. We're talking Newcastle up a lot.
Manchester City, Who
unless you know something that we don't know.
I mean, he I wish I did. He's the great bright light looking forward, I think, for Manchester. They never replaced Julian Alvarez, who I thought was an absolutely top player, and who in the World Cup, let's not forget, kept Lautaro Martinez, twice a Champions League finalist in the last 3 years, out of the starting lineup, and I thought correctly so. I think he's a brilliant player, but Marmoush looks as though he'll be a replacement.
Yes, I've got him in my front 3.
Which is?
Him, Marmoush Liam Delap of Ipswich. And we have to get to Leicester. And finally, with my last selection, El Canous, who I saw, actually, I didn't realise at the time, but in the 3rd and 4th place game in the Qatar World Cup, he made his international debut as a substitute for Morocco.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. He wasn't born in Morocco, but he qualifies. And I think in a very, very difficult season, he's the shining light. Benanotte on loan from Brighton's had his moments as well.
Yeah, but I quite like him.
But El Canous is... he'll... I would imagine somebody will come in for him. But
all I can say about Leicester this season is a curry house in a different part of the city made its debut in my life because I didn't go to my regular curry house. It was a lunchtime kickoff, 12:30. My regular curry house just down the road from the stadium doesn't open in the afternoon on Saturday. It opens lunchtime and evening. So I went to this other recommended one, which was the hottest food I think I've ever had in a curry house. It was spicy beyond belief, but it was very good and much better than any of their players. My frontline player is Strand Larsen of Wolves, who I'd never heard of. Sorry, apologise for my ignorance. But everyone's gone on about Cunha, quite rightly, who is an outstanding goal scorer. But Strand Larsen's a good player, isn't he?
Well, what I loved about him was the way he celebrated getting to 10 goals in the Premier League season, as if, gosh, I've surprised myself. And yeah, he is Norwegian, so he and Erling Haaland would probably have some game time together in the national team. And he scored more after that. He got to the 10 as if it took a bit of pressure off him to get to double figures. So, but quite a conventional sort of, not with the if you like, the exceptional qualities of Erling, but he's still got some of those, that nose for goal, and the delight in scoring. And some players just take goals as part of their job, really. The ones that I can relate to are the ones for whom that is why they're on the football pitch. And I saw that in him, and I think it's a very good choice. But Liam Delap, we wait to see where he goes. And there was a debate when I was up at Old Trafford about people in the game. I was working with Matt Holland, as I said in the letter, who's on the board at Ipswich and knows a lot about the Delap situation, also a lot about him as a player. He's seen him play a lot, as to what kind of system he could fit into, because he's a bit of an individual forward, a bit of a barnstorming player, a bit of a throwback as well. And Manchester City obviously didn't see that he had the potential to score goals in the Premier League, and cashed in on him. And he has scored goals in the Premier League, but
quite a few penalties. He didn't win them all. Yeah.
No, but he's a handful.
Yeah.
And that sounds like an almost like a backhanded compliment. But
I'm going to come on to
be.
him in a second. So we've still got him to come. That is our newcomers 11. So
you were going to talk more about Alex Palmer, you said.
Yeah. So let me just give you the 11s again. Martin has in goal Ramsdale, a back four of Wan Bissaka, Huijsen, Milenkovic and Lewis-Skelly. In midfield, Gray, Andre and Anderson. And up front, Marmoush, Delap and El Canus. And my 11 is Palmer in goal, a back four, Wan Bissaka, Milenkovic, Huijsen and Lewis-Skelly. A midfield two of Anderson and Merino, a three of Minte, Jorginho, Ruta and Marmoush, and at the front, Strand Larsen. We finish with we'll call it best 90 minutes 11, but I call it the team to make you scream.
Yeah.
These are the best 90 minutes that I've seen this season against Chelsea.
Yes, and I can't counter that.
So in goal, I've got Alex Palmer of Ipswich in a 2-2 draw at Stamford Bridge, which could have been 6-2, but for him. I don't know anything about Alex Palmer. I'd never heard of him when he joined Ipswich. Tell me about
he's plied his trade in the Football League, and ended up at West Bromwich Albion. He's played lots of games. He's like some goalkeepers, he ends up, well, like most goalkeepers, he's had stints where he's been the backup keeper and therefore not played so much. But he was. You don't get these choices very often where teams look into, particularly goalkeepers, they're looking into the Championship to see somebody who can solve a problem. And they had a problem, Ipswich, with the goalkeepers they started the season with. So I suppose that you could say it was a bit of a punt, but he's looked the part. He certainly looks the part when he's actually on the field. And he's now got Premier League stats, which must mean a lot to players. I mean, some players know all their stats, and they know how many games they played. They know all their data as well. But I don't know whether Alex is one of those. But if you've played in a Premier League game, you are there forever. That is a label you can wear with pride. And he's played several now. And, unless he gets another move, he's going to have to wait another season. Maybe Ipswich will get back up again. So that was Matt Holland's hope that they can do that. But he's done very well. And there are human stories as well as just straightforward football stories.
Wonderful. He was superb. My back four is Crystal Palace's Munoz for his performance at Selhurst Park, where he kept running in behind Cucarella and they kept hitting diagonal balls to him. He was brilliant. My centre-backs, first game of the season, Ruben Diaz, who we take for granted now. He wasn't the biggest problem at Manchester City by a long way this season in defence, except that he had a period unfit, didn't he, as well? And he got an awful lot of publicity about his love life, which I don't know if that distracted at all. Van Dijk, Liverpool away, just mountainous. And Gvardiol at left back, Manchester City away. Chelsea took the lead. He scored the equaliser. he's a man-mountain, Gvardiol, when he runs at you. I didn't know he was a left-back before he was a centre-back. He's frightening.
Well, that's a Pep Guardiola decision, isn't it? I mean, he was signed as a centre-back.
I've got 2 in midfield. Again, Tonali, Newcastle away, holding role, but scored after a minute and just ran the game. And he's a top player. And although I didn't have him in my 11, Premier League 11, Bruno Fernandes, in a game that Manchester United lost a couple of weeks ago at Stamford Bridge, he was as brilliant as he was terrible in the Europa League final. He was absolutely superb. Best midfielder on the pitch by a mile. And if he played like that every week, I'd sign him. I've got 3 behind the striker again. Salah, Liverpool away, made a goal. Made both goals, actually. He didn't score on the day. Did he score the first goal? No, he didn't score. But he made both goals. Oh, he scored a penalty. Yeah, but he made the penalty with a pass. And then he made the winning goal. Curtis Jones, who won the penalty and scored the other goal. So Salah and Jones in there for their performances at Anfield. Mitoma for Brighton, we played Brighton twice in a week, or twice in 8 days in the league and then in the FA Cup, and he destroyed us in both. He's a player, isn't he, Mitoma? He's a great player to watch, Mitoma. And he's another one of those who think the big clubs will come looking at. And up front, Delap for Ipswich away, their only home win of the season. They played 5-4-1. They got everyone behind the ball, and then they humped it upfield, and Delap went tearing after it and won a penalty. And
so Chelsea are one of the clubs that linked with them. Would you say, if you now sitting around the table with Todd Boehly and Enzo Maresca, would you say go get him?
I don't think Todd Boehly would have any say. I think it would be Enzo. I'm not sure Enzo Maresca would have much say. I think it would be the directors of football and Badad Egbali,
Messi, Stewart, and Winstanley.
Would I say it? I haven't seen the evidence sufficiently. I think there's clear potential. I'm not sure going into the Champions League that he'd be the one I'd be looking for, and I might want someone a little bit more experienced. In fact, just because it's Chelsea, the youngest average age ever in the Premier League this last season, I would only buy experience. So no, but that's not a comment on him, it's a comment on Chelsea.
But they won't buy experience because that's not their philosophy.
Yeah.
Can you just read out, for the benefit of our listeners, your team to make you scream?
So Alex Palmer, Munoz, Diaz, Van Dijk and Gvardiol, Tonali and Fernandes, Salah, Jones and Mitoma, and Delap. I hate them all. I just want to also... I've done a manager for each 11.
Okay.
So I want to give you that. My best 11, it's got to be Arne Slot.
Yeah, that I would agree with that 100%.
I mean, I don't know. This is a really soppy thing to say, but it's not. I'm not sure what he's done right.
He's won the league.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying is he's come in and he doesn't seem to have... The only obvious decision he's made, apart from, 2, we're not signing any big names this summer last year. But the second one was, I'm just going to withdraw the wide players a little bit and push Szoboszlai on and turn 4-3-3 into 4-2-3-1. But apart from that, he doesn't seem to have made any big decisions apart from whatever decisions he's made, he's got right. But do you know what I mean?
Don't you think that's part of, if you like, the
genius of management?
Yeah, the compliments that he should have bestowed on him, because we don't know those things. But he's spoken. He's been very open. But he's not given too much away. When you think of that
first game of the season when they struggled at Ipswich, and he took Quansah off at half time and put on, I think, Kanate then, although it might have been Gomez, I can't remember. But I mean, he's just got decisions right.
Well, he will have played a part in the renewal of the contracts of Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah. I'm pretty sure most Liverpool fans and most football sensible people would say that's this decision got right. And maybe Trent had made up his mind before even Arne Slot entered the building at the start of the season that this was going to go the way that it's gone.
My most improved manager isn't really a comment on him, but a comment on his team is Nuno Santo Espirito.
Something like that, and rearrange that name.
Is it Nuno Espirito Santo?
It's Nuno Espirito Santo.
Oh, there you go. Nuno, who's actually done with Forest what he did with Wolves. But it's just brilliant what he's done. The stadium is rocking. The stadium, everything that they've achieved, he's been absolutely essential to that achievement.
Well, I love Nuno to bits. He's a gentleman. He's always there to chat. He's not like another one. He doesn't give away too many secrets. He keeps himself to himself, but he's got a real presence about him. But I would say Oliver Glasner would have a chance of being the improved manager for what he's done with Crystal Palace to win a trophy and get 53 points. And I think he's really reactivated and maybe put Crystal Palace in a position where they can become the big club of South London instead of just a South London club, There is scope for it there. I lived in Streatham for many years, and you sort of felt that the potential, the fans are there, and the population is there. Obviously, there are a few other clubs in the vicinity as well. Quite a few call themselves the pride of South London, but I think, to be fair, there's a few imposters in there, because Palace have to be the pride of South London at the moment. And so for me, he and Nuno have got plenty to be proud of.
Newcomers 11. My manager is Vítor Pereira at Wolves. I mean, I know Slot was a newcomer, but Pereira came in a drastically bad situation in the middle of the season, and he not only got them playing football, he not only got them winning points, he went and had a drink with supporters in the pubs of Wolverhampton after games.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, he's cheered up a football club that was, with the greatest respect, Gary O'Neill had got it as far as the old league saying, I couldn't take them any further. They needed a change of direction. It was a shrewd move to bring in somebody with so many Portuguese-speaking players at the club, to bring in actually a manager who had the chance of, I think, Everton 3 or 4 years ago was on their shortlist.
He was like an underperforming manager up to now. He was highly rated in Portugal, but never quite.
He travelled the world now.
Never quite sat in one club long enough.
Or one country. No. The one negative was against him, apparently, when the Everton job came up and he was in consideration, was that his English wasn't good enough. But down the pub, he's picked up a few phrases, hasn't he? I think he's done it. And by the way, as I mentioned in my letter, Ruben Amorim's command of English is, it was Cristiano Ronaldo, I believe, called him a poet. Yeah. Which, wow,
And my best team to make you scream, my opposition manager was Eddie Howe. A couple of weeks ago when Chelsea went there and they had no Trippier and Lewis Hall was injured and everything. They had issues at fullback and centre-back and midfield. And without any warning, he went 3 at the back with Murphy as a wing-back. And it worked. Well, they scored within 2 minutes and it completely won the game. And it was a change of plan and a change of shape that just worked brilliantly. And maybe it was a struggle at the end of the season with them only coming 5th, but over 90 minutes, that was the best.
Only 5th. I think the Newcastle fans would say but they could have been 4th, they could have been 3rd, I suppose.
Boys, don't you think Newcastle are the lucky team that England got 5 in the Champions League, and at any other season they'd have missed out? Do we say Newcastle lucky?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. Alan Shearer, eat your flipping heart out.
I'm sure I'll invite you to the first Champions League game at St James's Park as a guest of honor.
I'll be otherwise engaged. I'll be watching Chelsea.
Yeah.
Who came 4th?
Luckily.
That is our 11s.
But the league table doesn't lie. There's no luck about that. I withdraw that comment, and you should withdraw the comment about Newcastle. You are where you deserve to be after 38 games, and I've got 1 or 2 stats that I might...
Yes, and that brings us on to... Stoppage time.
Stoppage time.
Well, it's stoppage time for the Premier League season 24-25. Just a few things to throw at you. 1,115 goals scored in the Premier League, the second most of any 38-game season. Mo Salah, 29 goals plus 18 assists, and he's a record-equaling goal boot winner with Thierry Henry, fourth time it's happened, and it's amazing to those figures, given that he's supposed to be at an age where he might tail off a bit. 47 goal involvements, that's the most in a 38 Premier League game season. It equalled Alan Shearer, aforementioned, in 92-93, Andy Cole in 94-95, which were 42 game seasons. So that's another landmark for him. Brentford scored in the opening minute in 3 consecutive games. That's a kind of feat, isn't it, that we haven't really had before. That's the first time that's happened in Premier League history. Justin Kluivert, who you mentioned earlier, first player in Premier League history to score a hat-trick of penalties in a single game. And amazingly, all 3 won by his teammate Evan Nielsen, who deserved a mention a bit earlier in this podcast. Arne Slot, the 5th manager to win the Premier League in his debut season.
And the first Dutchman ever to win the Premier League. Astonishing, really.
And one thing that I think we've all enjoyed, the comeback. It's been a comeback season. 63 games have been decided by comeback wins. That's I think one more than the highest of any other season on record. And 7 of them have been a comeback from 2 goals down, which you don't have very often. And what I love, just the last stat to finish off, the late drama. I've spent how many years of the Premier League? 33 years, saying this is the league of late goals. 95 goals scored in the 90th minute or later, which is the second most of any season on record. So it's always a nail biter. There's always something to talk about. You know, we don't get told which games we go to. We don't pick them. And there's not a Premier League game that I would turn my nose up at, because it's constant drama and often of a surprising nature. And it is from first whistle to last. And we love it.
And we're on throughout the summer. So from Martin and me,
See ya.
ta-ra.